Hello, and welcome to an incredibly special, if impromptu, DM's Book Club, a podcast where we read about some Dungeons & Dragons and discuss how we might include it in our role-playing campaigns. If we'd been more forward planning, we probably would have done something on the night of, but
yeah, I think it was much in
just a week, to be fair. And then when we both realised, oh, maybe we should actually talk about it. So we thought, I should introduce, my name is Fiona, and with me as always is my co-host Hamilton, and we're doing a quick, what I would call Friday lunchtime chat about D&D Direct announcement, which I genuinely thought was just going to be a lot of minis and maybe like one or two like, oh, here's some things coming but not confirming anything, and I was completely wrong, so...
It felt like they had to confirm something. They've done so much of this like half-arsing business that I think it was the time that they had to do something. And with the UAs that have come out in the past year that we've both looked at already, we all know. Just tell us.
Yeah, so the big sort of headlines is that Spelljammer has finally been confirmed. And I will say on the lead up to when I was in the YouTube chat, and my God, so many people were going, Spelljammer? Spelljammer! I was like, oh guys, please, don't embarrass yourselves. And of course then they were like, Spelljammer! As a result, so obviously...
He said #Spelljammer confirmed even before it.
I know.
So it was going to happen.
It was going to happen. So yes, they've officially announced a new sort of box set of it, and that's the thing. It's not just a one book campaign setting. It's actually 3 books in total. So like a player's guide or an astral adventurer's guide to the planes or that sort of thing. So for DMs and players, we've then got a bestiary, so presumably new monsters that will come out, and finally an adventure as well. So they've gotten like proper like they're not doing this half-assed. They're doing like everything. I think probably to get people into the Spelljammer universe, because obviously it's something that's so dear to so many people. But as I did see in the comments, some people were like, but what is Spelljammer? You're just like, where have you been?
Well, go to the DnD Book Club and listen to
that episode. Yeah, exactly.
More like the old-fashioned style of doing settings, like you used to, like the Planescape campaign box set and the Spelljammer campaign box set usually came with an introductory guide to that campaign setting, then a bestiary, so a monstrosity, guide to monsters, and an adventure. So it is like what they used to do. Looking at D&D Beyond now, you can buy it. You pre-order it for $39.99.
Yeah,
UK.
Yeah. There's a sale on just now. I will say it goes all the way, I think, to the May 1st as a spring sale. But yeah, they've actually it's not bad. The only thing I say, our friend JR pointed out that all 3 of these books have been sort of touted at 64 pages each.
Yes.
Which is not much. If you look at the previous sort of books we've had out, they're usually in the 150, 200 sort of thing. So it is a little, I guess, worrying, because I wonder if it's going to be that whole sort of custom lineage thing again, and it's like a small box.
To be fair, it's 64 and 64 in terms of like you've got like I'd say you take the adventure and the campaign setting and say, well, that's the same as Strixhaven. In a sense, it is a much wider world, but I think really it's they're not changing it. It's not as complicated as D&D as it used to be for a start. And secondly, I think they just need to additionally add in ship combat, which I think is probably 10 pages. A good 10 pages on lore, but then a lot of the lore I think is going to be based on Forgotten Realms, generally, Wild Space. And then a bit about probably key things like the Spelljammer itself, Rock of Ra, and maybe 1 or 2 other sort of like some sort of another bit of lore on peoples, but then maybe they'll put that in the monstrosity. So like monstrous is not called, that's the monstrous I keep thinking the monstrous compendium, but it's the guide to Astral Menagerie. They might put a lot of that lore in that document as well. So it's 180 odd in total.
Yeah, it's not to be sniffed at. And I think as well with the adventure, they were very keen to point out that it's like episodic. So whether or not each episode is like one session or several sessions, that they've broken it up deliberately in that way to have cliffhangers at the end of each one. So I'm wondering if they've deliberately made it more compact for a storyline, say if you were streaming it or if you were just running it, because obviously there's been so many books come out. Obviously we just had Call of the Neverdeep. We've got Radiant Citadel coming out, which is an anthology. So maybe instead of having these great big epics or sandbox-esque type things like Curse of Strahd used to be, and maybe Descent into Avernus, that sort of thing, you can actually hone down that this is is the main storyline. Because there was this sort of backlash about video games where they talked about like it takes 400 hours to fully complete a video game, and no one has time for that. So maybe they want more people to get through their products and not be overwhelmed by like, oh, well, you can play this in 12 sessions or stuff. So I did thought that was quite interesting. They were pointing out that.
I think that's right, and it's something that I always mistakenly say when instead of saying sessions of D&D, I call them episodes because I do streaming. But I think it's because that's the way people are consuming D&D media, and that's the way people are getting engaged into playing it, that it makes a lot of sense. I think also a lot of people are streaming as well. And so I think they've gone down that route because that seems to be what people are expecting from D&D, because that's what they see. When I do streaming, we love a good cliffhanger at the end of an episode because that's what TV does, and it makes it exciting for both players and for people watching. And I think it's interesting. I think they've shown that in all of the recent ones we talked about, a move towards reacting to how streaming and media of D&D.
Agreed. And it'll be interesting. Again, I don't know if they'll do it, but obviously they announced this other sort of actual play with a ton of celebrities in it. And I think rewatching the trailer for that, I do realize that I think it's Legends of the Multiverse it's called. And it does feel very Guardians of the Galaxy, of core 5 people and then a ton of guest stars doing stuff.
The only bit I missed in it a bit because my internet cut out, but I kind of looked at it back again, and I think it looks interesting. I think another way to just get people interested in watching, learning about Spelljammer. Great cast. I mean, it's your usual. It's your top 5 to 10 sort of players that we all know from all the big shows, sort of thing, isn't it?
It gets people in to watch it and stuff. I wonder if they're going to play it from the book. Considering stuff like Black Die Society, that does a Curse of Strahd campaign, which B. Dave Walters does, but he's completely changed things around. So maybe it'll be like, here's some of the first episode, which is of the book, and then change it around and stuff like that. The actual character art was beautiful. I finally understand what plasmoids look like, and I'm like, oh, that makes a lot more sense. And the Hadozi, again, they look really good actually. These are the flying monkeys, which again I couldn't really picture when we talked about it previously, but now I'm like, oh, and of course I'm a big fan of auto gnomes because they look amazing. Gonna play those at ASAP.
The only thing I would say is, and I don't know if they will change it, if these are the finalised books, but I think it is. I was hoping, and maybe this will come in the old covers, but I was hoping for a difference in visuals on the covers. Do you know what I mean? But maybe that's what will come in the old covers, because I love that 80s Spelljammer drawing and just really jumping into it in its own way.
Unfortunately for that, I think they've got the Hydra 76 person doing the, because there was that sort of the teaser image of Boo and all that sort of thing. And of course, there's a picture of a GIF or a GIF on one of them as well. And they look great, but I agree, after have it been, I think, spoilt by the Radiant Citadel's alt cover and the Fizz bands as well, which is a good one. And just so, I don't know, maybe they were just like, we'll keep it safe and simple and don't rock the boat, so to say, rock the Spelljammer, so to speak. There's talk about, again, just briefly, so there's stuff like space clowns, which instantly makes me go, ugh, but it makes sense. And vampire pirates, murder comets. And so you're just like, okay, we're going where we've not been before. We're going buck wild. And that's exciting, actually. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to see what that comes out. And hopefully, fingers crossed, we can finally be like, put this whole Spelljammer to bed and just be like, hey, you've got it now. Let's move on. Going on to then the other big announcement then at the end of the D&D Direct stream, sort of left as just one more thing, very Columbo style, was the announcement that Dragonlance, an adventure in Dragonlance, is coming out next year, along with a mini war game as well, which again you rightly predicted that we were going to have more skirmishes.
The wrong setting.
Yeah, another big thing was there were minis everywhere. There was minis which you could put into other minis certainly for the Planescape ones, which was it looked really cool, I will say. But yeah, the Dragonlance one was really interesting, and yes, it's an adventure, not a setting though, which makes me think there will be another. They've talked about there are going to be re-releases of other settings. Spelljammer made sense. Dragonlance, I wonder if it's going to be a similar thing to Strixhaven, where we're going to have part setting, part adventure.
I think that's probably right. I think that's what it seems like. as we've said before on our Dragonlance thing, we don't know too much about the actual setting, but I think definitely the battle game, and as you said, they've got to scale miniatures for the actual spelljammers, the flying ships. So they're just jumping on that Games Workshop bandwagon, which they've done this up, and it makes a lot of sense, to be honest.
Absolutely makes a lot of sense. So so that's Dragonlance Shadow of the Dragon Queen, which is the adventure book, and then Dragonlance Warriors of Krynn, which is a war game experience. I know. So
the voice actor who's in The Expanse is one of the coolest people in the world. So
that was very exciting. Yeah, she was great. Yeah, if you haven't seen the teaser trailer for it, I recommend going because it's beautifully narrated by her. It's amazing. The other sort of quick announcement I just wanted to talk about briefly was the new starter set that's come out. So they're re-releasing it, which I was quite not shocked at, but a bit surprised because the last one came out in 2019. It's about 3 years ago. But again, it's just the same starter set, but with a new adventure or two. Maybe it's going to be the same.
It's called Dragons of Stormwreck Isle is the adventure. If you zoom in on the picture.
Enhance. So it says this box contains essential rooms plus everything you need to play heroic characters caught up in an ancient war amongst dragons as they explore the secrets of Stormwreck Isle. And I wondered if, compared to the last starter set, which had, I'm just trying to find them all now. So obviously, it was a Dragon of Icewind Peak was sort of the main adventure, but then you had 3 other adventures that you could unlock online to carry on this thing. So I wonder if it's going to be the same thing, that Stormwreck Isle is like the location of it, but you have like the first adventure, that Dragon one, and then unlock the other ones online on D&D Beyond.
And that leads us on neatly, I guess, then to the other things they do with D&D Beyond now that Wizards own them, which is another announcement that came out recently before this, that they're putting a monstrous compendium up there for these spelljammer creatures that feels like there's going to be more of these. And there was access to a prequel adventure for Spelljammer if you sign up for your account. So I think that just shows this sort of idea that what you were saying about maybe that in the D&D future, getting about more ways to engage with play. And so online only content sounds like a way they're probably going. Also, maybe UA comes back to D&D Beyond.
Fingers crossed, because that'd be great to play. This compendium stuff, they sort of announced it sort of like, again, the announcement itself was a little bit, I wasn't entirely sure what it was. Is it new monsters? Is it all classic ones that you have access to? But it's anyone that has a D&D Beyond account or a Wizards account. I think, again, like you said, they're sort of integrating those. And it was like, it's available right now. And I was like, oh, I'll go check it out then. And it's just having a quick look at them. She says, looking for the many, many topics. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 new sort of monsters, and the Volume 1 Monsters, Compendium Volume 1 Spelljammer creatures. And these are all creatures that you would find in the wilds of space. Lots of different CR ratings, and all of them, I think for the first time ever I've ever seen this, all of them have an image that goes with the stat block, which I really love, actually. We've said it before, we're massive fans of the art, but not every stat block has an image of it. I just wanted to point out the first one is the asteroid spider, which is a gargantuan monstrosity. And you think, no, it's an asteroid spider. And there's a picture of this creature grappling a spelljammer. Yeah. Oh, this is quite big. It's quite big. It's horrible. So
it's really fun.
Again, with these monsters as well, you want to fight creatures in this wild space which aren't going to be a proper TPK. So like an astral dreadnought or any of those things. This is only a challenge rating 15. So you could possibly win, but more chance than an astral dreadnought, which is like in the 20s or something, I seem to remember.
Yeah, and it's got a fun thing that it snares a ship with a magical web, which is kind of like something that you would, it's just like a little thing that you would be floating around on Spelljammer, and then you're like, what's oh crap, we're stuck.
Yeah, the idea of space, you're going through an asteroid field and like, why are we going so slowly? And what are these things? Yeah, because it's kind of interesting because obviously space, there's no air, so it feels like there would be dust, I guess, or just I don't know. I didn't do science at school, so I don't know. Was there a monster that was like a standout for you at all from this monstrous compendium?
As much as I love the art for the robot for these Clockwork Horror,
yes,
it's definitely my Robot Wars dream.
It is so much like Robot Wars, yes.
It's got blades for hands and stuff like that, but the Eldritch Lich has definitely got to be it, because it's like, it just takes the eldritchness and adds it to a lich, and it's got such cool artwork. I like it.
It is very cool. It feels very much like we're in Alien now. You've got you got the xenomorph, you've got this thing. It's taken over. It looks pretty nasty, and that's also a challenge rating 15. So it's not as strong as say your regular Lich, as if you're going to come up with that. But again, that sort of space and that idea of far realm, and then it's got a little table about the great old ones as well, which is always quite fun. The other one I quickly wanted to mention was the Fractine, which is a 2-dimensional creature that flies throughout wild space in the astral sea, folding and refolding like a piece of origami. And I think that's amazing. I feel like it's crazy and wild, and that's the idea of space, is that it's not things that you can comprehend, it's just something that you can't comprehend. So this idea that you would, again, we talked about this before, about this idea of I can't visually see it, and even the image of it, I'm like, I still don't know how that worked. I just thought it was such a cool monster that I'd not seen before, so I'm very excited to encounter that in my games or run it in my games.
It's just bringing a new concept to it, which I think is kind of more like what the whole Spelljammers and Planescapes did, which is just bringing completely new concepts and making them into monsters in a really interesting way. Doing it. Other than that, I think there was some that are just kind of not generic, but they are just monstrous in and stuff. I think the puppeteer parasite you mentioned has been very alien as well.
Oh yeah, it's too many teeth. It's like a sponge with too many teeth.
But also the fact that it latches onto you and controls you is very much like the alien parasites of the thing. I love the Starlance art because it's like a shark thing for space with this really cool sort of character resting on the back of it.
Yeah, it's very like a pterodactyl almost in a way, but with a shark. And it's got an invisibility cloak up to 3 times a day. So again, that idea of a cloaking device, getting your Star Trek in there as well. But then you go all the way to some stuff like I'm going to say this wrong, but the Yitrati, it's like splinters off the Yggdrasil, this world tree, and it's like just basically a dead tree in space, and you're like, oh, no thank you. Or the Goon Balloon, which I think looks like as if Kirby or Qbert is it goes into Hellraiser, that sort of territory. Because the skin looks very sort of fleshy, and I'm like, no.
I don't know if I do want to see it, but I like the idea of a Kirby goes to hell.
Oh my goodness, that'd be amazing. I'm always a bit worried when it says in the stat block, like, certain words that make you think of stuff. So like one of its actions is burst. You're like, I don't want it to burst.
I think the other things that kind of disappointing ones, let's go to the disappointing ones, which was the films and computer games, because we haven't really done anything new, and it's coming out next year. I don't know if that information was out yet. I
will admit, as soon as I realized, they're doing a bit, I did kind of go away and make a cup of tea, because it's that sort of thing where you're like, I know, and I know it's their thing, and I get it, but I just find it so cringy as someone who creates content, who helps people in my actual job to be personal, be stuff, and I was like, this is just. And I'm just like, just be cool, which is very hard to tell people that.
And then Neverwinter.
People are still playing it, and so again, I know the whole point of this. It's interesting. This whole showcase, the D&D Direct showcase, it felt very much like E3 or like when they Capcom, when they do a whole showcase, like here's the main game, but here's all the spin-offs and stuff like that. So I know we can always enjoy D&D in other ways, absolutely. I couldn't give a toss about the video games. I've got plenty of other video games that I like. The film, in case you've been living under a rock, there is a D&D film coming out, which I'm definitely not looking forward to. I think it's going to be dreadful. Unless they're recording Chris Pine at a table rolling D20s, I'm not interested.
Do you think is that true? I mean, that's kind of interesting, because I'm not quite. I don't have that same. I just think I'm happy with it just being, as they said, it's set in the Forgotten Realms, it's set on the Sword Coast, which I thought was interesting. It has a name which is Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves, which means it's just playing the best class in D&D, which is rogue.
I did wonder if it's going to be a whole group of rogues. They just listened into one of our conversations, like we're all rogues.
They did. They changed the story. Don't get rid of the bards, just have rogues. I'm actually more interested in seeing Waterdeep come to life than I am seeing Neverwinter or Luskan or any of those places, or Baldur's Gate. Then I am seeing here's a bunch of people playing D&D, there's their fantasy world they've made up, in my mind, personally. But I know that's not, because I think we get that from streamed content and other content, and Critical Role's animated series, which I'm so excited, I loved, and seeing that sort of world, that I think Dungeons & Dragons should stick, personally. I don't know if this is supposed to be but to showing off their content. And then if someone else can do a Vox Machina, then totally cool, let's do that.
Yeah, it's tricky because obviously it's them such a big foray, and I know they're trying to expand to get more people in and all that sort of thing, but I just feel like it's very hard to make an adaptation of something when you've already done an amazing job of it. So, for example, Terry Pratchett, I think his works, and I say to someone who's come to it recently, sort of reading his books, they have a certain voice, they have a certain world. The world of Ankh-Morpork is beautiful, and it's beautifully described, and it's stuff that you can play in. You can make role-playing games of it, and it can be your thing. As soon as someone tries to adapt it, it's their version of it. I don't have a problem with The Watch, the BBC adaptation per se. I think it's interesting and it looks great, but for me, it's not Terry Pratchett. And that's what lots of people say, is that it's not the thing. And I think that's the problem, is that we'll get to the film, we'll watch it and go, well, that was a decent action fantasy film. It's not D&D though. I think it's really hard to create a good adaptation of something. And I think it's the same with films.
You wouldn't watch a Curse of Strahd TV show though.
Oh, but...
Would you not? I would love it.
I think Curse of Strahd is so amazing, but also can be quite silly. I wanted to be a comedy actor, like the person who plays Nandor and What We Do in the Shadows.
It has to be. But then it has to have random episodes where people do something completely off book. And I think you'd have to make those nods. I agree, it would be one person's take on Curse of Strahd. All these other people who play it take. But I think it would be. I feel that's the one that you could be like, everyone loves that. That's one of the ones they're putting in all the other languages, which is really positive thing. I don't know. That's where I'm at. It's interesting.
The announcement of new localization. So the books are going to be in French, German, and Spanish, I think. That's amazing. So it's and it's also recent books as well. So that means their updated rules and obviously the journey. I was going to say Journey to the Sunless Citadel. That is an old campaign. That's an old adventure. The Radiant Citadel, which will be great. And they showed, and of course in the D&D Direct, they showed a little bit of more of the art for the Radiant Citadel and talked about this idea. It's 13 adventures, levels 1 to 14, which you can play in any order as part of your normal campaign. But there's this idea of these portals where you can create your own stuff. So I like that idea that they've deliberately made it so like, here's our worlds that we've created, but you've got space to create your own. And I'm hoping more content becomes like that. I know there's this whole thing about like your Waterdeep is canon, just like someone else's Waterdeep is canon. I just felt like the way they've obviously, it makes sense because the Radiant Citadel is obviously it's Planescape. It is that sort of all these worlds converging and stuff. It was beautiful as always and really interesting. I think my big disappointment of the stream is that they announced, they announced the minis, obviously all these cool minis that can put in together, and then they're like, also here are these 2 briefcases of boringness. So like,
forgot about it.
Yes, exactly. You forgot about it because they're not interesting. So the idea is that they have 2 cases for DMs. So one was terrain with this interlocking jigsaw type pattern, which I think is really clever actually. And you could have stickers to put things on, which are reusable. And then you have the same, but with tokens for monsters with reusable stickers. I think this would have been great about 5 years ago. Because now we're online, we're doing, we're having VTTs and all that sort of thing. And also I've definitely seen that interlocking tile thing done by another Kickstarter like 3 or 4 years ago. You combine new parts and all that sort of thing. So it's just something I just think they're just a little bit behind with the times there.
Go buy a copy of Gloomhaven and use the rest.
I did like the idea it comes in 2 briefcases. So I can imagine you rock up with all your books and stuff, and then you're like, open it. Yeah.
But I still think we're moving back into a world of reality again. And so I think it probably is the right time if maybe they've been holding on to it for a while.
Yeah.
I kind of like it. I think if I was going to start doing a home game, depends how much it is, but if that's 20 quid each, 40 quid for the pair, I'd probably pay it. I'd probably try and use it, at least the token ones, because it's like, that's just something dealt with. You know what I mean? There's just like all my monsters printed out and I'm done. Yeah. Even though I do like this, I think it would be better if they did standing minis, as in you just did the little 2 little standing clips. And had.
I agree. I quite like those. Yeah, the 2D standing minis. I think they're missing out on a trick because then you can actually see it. Because no one's looking at a top view anymore. They're sort of on the side and stuff. So. Yeah. I have some interesting rumors. I think you'll find Hamilton. I know, exciting as we sort of wrap this up. So, you know how I talked about saying, where's a virtual tabletop system? There's this talk about Roll20 and all that sort of thing, and nothing really happened in the stream about that. Fair enough. There are job postings for Wizards of the Coast looking for developers for virtual tabletop stuff. And it's in plain view, but they're looking for people with certain gaming experience. So it makes it sound like they're looking for a way to create 3D virtual tabletop, aka a bit like Tailspire, which could be very, very cool, I think, because obviously Tailspire is such a, it's used on quite a lot of the streams we know, and it looks pretty cool. Like, the way it is. It is a lot of work to make up. The other thing was possibly talks about having DMs Guild content also on a similar, if Hasbro or Wizards buy them as well. So you could be able to port content into such a thing as well. And if you can imagine, again, possibly very long off, but the idea that you buy something on DMs Guild, which has tokens and maps and all that sort of thing, and then you could just instantly port into something like this. That would be amazing.
Foundry links. I know I've seen a lot of Foundry BTT links with DMs Guild, and you can buy them on there. But yeah, that would be great. I think the only one that I think would probably make more sense if they were going to make it so people make their own, but if they made 3D versions of all, like Tailspire, quality of all their main campaigns. My gosh, yes, totally would enjoy that. The other one is, have you seen Dungeon Alchemist? Have you seen that? So you draw a square, and you draw a square in 2D, and it builds a room for you. And so you take your map, you draw out all the rooms, and just say that's the bedroom, that's the thing, and it just automatically places what you need, which is like Tailspire, but with half the time, with a third of the time input, if you know what I mean. So if it's something like that as well, that'd be great.
Yeah. The final thing was that people were talking about, like, with D&D products in general, you're looking at all the stuff that's come out. A lot of it is aimed primarily at DMs running adventures, rather than, you can buy your player options and stuff like that. And they were like, well, it's really difficult, like, because there's not many DMs around. But actually, looking at the sales and stuff of people buying stuff, I think there has been like a big increase in people who are running games and trying it for the first time. It's just finding their niche and going, oh, I want to try that. So whether that's through stuff like one-off ones like Planescape, having the box set like that, or having something like Radiant Citadel where you can do individual things, I'm thinking that's really cool. If more and more people are getting into it, not just as players, but as DMs, that's actually really exciting that people want to actually learn how to run a game and into storytelling and just having a good time. It's like, I think it's a similar sort of renaissance that like board games are having, that people would buy a board game, be that instructor, and then encourage other people to bring board games and have board game nights and stuff like that. So there you go.
All exciting stuff for the future then. It feels like.
Yes. So, Hamilton, with a brief that was our 30 minutes of going through 30 minutes of content. Hamilton, what are you up to? Anything happening? What you got to do your plugs at the end of this. That's the point. I know. It's not just us chatting.
We are sort of moving into final art of our Shattered Realm show. We're in the Feywild on Monday, and we'll be in the Feywild week on Monday, but in a world that you might be recognizable from our when we did our Make a Domain of Delight. And we used that setting for it. So if you like that show, want to see how that maybe presents itself as a world people to interact with, you can listen/watch along to that. So that's on Monday nights at 9 p.m. UK time, 4 p.m. Eastern, and podcasts a week later, basically. And what about yourself, Fiona?
Look at that.
What, where, how, when?
Well, how and when? Well, who? My name is Fiona. When? Right now. I'm talking to you right now. What? It's a podcast. Where? There you go. Where? I knew there was an order I did them in, but I can't remember. So where is What Am I Rolling, which is a twice monthly RPG one-shot podcast. As always, it's going very, very well. We've had 2 interviews out recently. We've had one with the Merkborg designers, and we've had one recently with the Death in Space designers. Long Haul is coming out. I do promise that. I also did another fun recording with my, friends. I guess that's what the word is now. Friends at the now defunct Most podcast at Rooster Teeth. We did that with my friend Sarah, and we did You Awaken in a Strange Place, where it was all completely improvised. And it was the most terrifying half an hour of my life trying to come up with an adventure, but everyone seemed to enjoy it. So that will be out soon as well. Other than that, hey, got an offer code. You got... That would be at Third Space Gaming in Burnley, your friendly local game store. Burnley, UK. I realise I need to keep saying that because I'm sure there's other Burnleys around the world. So you should type into check out DMBC You get 10% off your first order, and it can be on probably any, if you want D&D pre-orders, any other RPGs, Terrain, maybe these new Skirmishes mini stuff will be out soon. I don't know. You could always get 10% off there. So yeah, check those out. And I think that's everything. I can't remember what we plug anymore. So
I think that's it, isn't it? I think that's everything.
I think, how professional are we going? I think that's everything.
And what we'll do is, why don't we just move on then to our new favourite saying?
It's just our favourite saying now. I think the newness has worn off since I've said it. But thank you so much for listening to this slightly rambled, impromptu lunchtime chat. And we will see you on the flip side.